Happy birthday ModPo. Hi, I'm Dan Bergmann, and because I have non-speaking autism, I am typing these words into a text-to-speech computer. Before I got my undergraduate degree at the Harvard Extension School, before I contributed to 2 episodes of Pensound's Poem Talk, before I spent my first year of college at Penn, I enrolled in the first ever version of ModPo, and if I hadn't, I don't see how the other items on that list could have followed. ModPo put the study of poetry and therefore the study of life itself within my ability as a 16-year-old beset by autism. I could run around the room and scream during the videos as long as I came back to answer the questions. I could take as long as I needed to write a very short essay. And when I did, someone else would read it, someone who didn't know me except through that essay. I had to keep up. Week 1 was quickly followed by week 2, something you all may have noticed. And my reward for keeping up was the knowledge that for the first time in my life I was following a curriculum that had not been adapted to my special needs. I know now that it's not just me. ModPo makes poetry, and Al and the people who sit around the table at Kelly Ryder's house, accessible to hundreds of thousands of people, all with individual needs. And so what if everyone, even those without autism, is beset by something? In the past 10 years we have all become aware that the internet can potentiate the weakest sides of human nature. But ModPo is one of the great human inventions, and it would not have been possible without the internet and people who believe that real information could and should be shared all over the world and for free. Coursera was born sharing information about machine learning with engineers who had no access to college. But Al took the idea a big step forward. What we share in ModPo isn't exactly information. It's the joy of the shared quest to turn information into meaning. These days we are surrounded by data, but in ModPo we turn data back into meaning. And ModPo goes further. Gertrude Stein would not have appreciated the idea that her poems were about creating meaning. Rather, she drains just enough meaning from her arrangement of words to enable us to revel in their flavor. I know, from all the other Coursera courses I have taken and all my in-person college courses, that ModPo is unique. ModPo models, that's an autism jargon word, it means setting an example. ModPo models people coming together in a group to work towards understanding something. That meant more to me than anything. I saw those young adults sitting at the table with Al and wanted to sit there with them. Keeping up and doing all the work and earning that certificate was the hardest thing I had ever done. Before I started, Mom used to say,
"But how will Danny ever learn to write more than one sentence at a time?"
I learned during ModPo. My parents took me to the Final Words webcast. Al asked people there to pick 2 words that summed up the experience of the course for them.
Let's hear Daniel's first.
Yeah, so he had a 2-word poem. Michael, why don't you read it?
Dan's,
Wait a minute, let's get the mic to Michael.
Dan's 2 words are not impossible. Wait, he's going to say it.
It became a thing. Someone started a forum topic called Not Impossible, and people wrote in all the things they were determined to accomplish for themselves. Many of them said that if I could do ModPo they could do some other thing they had always wanted to accomplish. And I learned to my astonishment that I, who needed so much help to do anything, could be of use to other people. Thank you, Jason, for making sure my 2 words got heard and then inviting me to be a guest in one of your classes and then inviting me to enroll in your summer school course. Thank you, Al, for backing me all along the way and also insisting that I grow up, and thank you, Kate Herslin, a recent student of Al's, for taking me to classes and putting up with me as I learned to tolerate it and contribute in real time. It took a lot. But does anyone really need any less? Back then I could only describe what ModPo wasn't. Now I hope I have shared a little about what it is. Thank you.
Dan Bergmann. There's Dan. Thank you. Zach, can you bring my mic back up, please?
Thank you, Dan and Michael and Meredith, who are also along for the ride. I'd like to add Jason to that list of people to respond. So, and you'll have to be brief, but really, really excited to hear from people who are very close to Dan, people who have seen him in action, to others, Monica meeting him for the first time. So Julia Block first, followed by Monica.
Yeah, I'm incredibly moved by both of those moments that we just heard, and I'm going to say something that might sound a little wonky, but I remember when we were getting started, we were like, there can't be a certificate, there can't be there can't be quizzes, there can't be a hoop to jump through. This is not about achievement. This is about an experience. But in true ModPo tradition, we hacked the certificate, and so did students like Dan. Like, you made the certificate what you needed it to be, and that was the vision from the very beginning.
Thank you, Julia. Monica and Amber Rose is on deck.
I'm so moved that I'm almost speechless. But I was thinking, apropos of what Virgil was saying, PTSD, and reading the same material over and over and over again sometimes, and keeping returning to the work. I was thinking about this idea that we change, we go back to a text, and we can we can gauge our evolution, our experience, what we've learned in life, when we measure it against our reading of the same piece, because literature does not change. A poem does not change. We change. And I am always like, I go back to something and I go, I can't believe I missed this thing that I've read 15 times. And every time I go back to a text, it gives me more and more and more. And it's this beautiful dance between what I know about myself, what I know about the work, and how it just keeps blossoming and giving more. So yes, it's a great way of overcoming and learning from one's traumas and losses and life, really, because it's full of it. So that's
that's what you said works so beautifully for reading poetry in particular, especially poetry that is deemed by many to be difficult. One has to read it again and again and grow with it, to the experience of these two extraordinary people who, in both cases, need to do repetition. It's just part of the nature. Need to do repetition and are making the best of that particular incredible quality of theirs to do things again and again and stick with them until you master them or can figure out a way to make something bigger of them. And it's a great parallel between the situations that have been described here, and they're just two of many, I can assure you, of people around the world, and what we do with poetry. What a good match. Who knew that would be the case? Amber Rose and Kate is on deck.
Yeah, it was really wonderful to hear both of those reflections, and actually listening to the first made me think about June Jordan's poem, A Difficult Miracle, or The Difficult Miracle of Black Poetry in America. There's some title. Dr. Beavers knows the whole title. But whatever the poem is.
No, I don't.
Oh, okay. The Difficult Miracle of Black Poetry in America, something like a sonnet for Phyllis Wheatley. There it is. But she talks about a poet needing their own, like when you imagine a poet has her own desk. A poet has her own pen, her own paper from which she writes her own ideas, right? And the scene that we were given of the poet looking over the overgrown grave in Afghanistan, that's not what we think of when we think of the poet or a poet who's writing. And I love that ModPo makes us release everything we thought we knew about who a poet can be, or who a critic of poetry is, or a reader of poetry is, or how they communicate, or where they show up, or what language they're writing in, or what they're doing in their spare time. And ModPo, gives us the opportunity to believe in the same way that, when Al just calls on us to say something and we have to say something, we have to believe that we're smart in that moment. And we really only believe because Al believes, because he asked us, right? And when we listen to each other, we affirm one another that just whatever ideas we woke up with that morning are valid and true and worth listening to. And I think Dan, shows that as well. But what I also want to say briefly about Dan is just that I'm so grateful that ModPo created the opportunity for us to be able to hear from folks like Dan, who is truly brilliant. I mean, just about needs to be my fourth dissertation advisor at this point.
That poem
but-
talk, the most recent one we did.
No, incredible. I mean,
Dan was amazing.
the questions that Dan has asked me in ModPo spaces, in poem talks, and then over emails, you know, outside of ModPo, have been some of the most eye-opening, challenging questions I've ever been asked. And we would not have found each other, but maybe more importantly, we would not have believed that we could exchange ideas unless the context of ModPo existed. And for that, I'm very, very grateful.
Amber Rose Johnson, you said it beautifully. Wow. This is very cool. I had no idea we were going here. Kate is up, Erica's on deck, and then Jason.
I wanted to echo what Virgil and Dan and also Monica said about the repetition. I've also been here since 2013, participating in a variety of capacities, and ModPo always reminds me or puts me in mind of Heraclitus's river that you can't step in twice because it's not the same river and it's not the same man. And I loved what both Virgil and Dan said about one's change over time and the therapeutic qualities of returning to this relatively small selection of poems year after year, and being able to track your own evolution or the evolution of your own thinking in doing that.
Kate, thank you so much. That was great. Erica.
I'm sort of struggling a bit for words because I feel so moved by Dan and Virgil and also the different comments that everyone has shared. Quickly, I would say that a couple of things are really resonating for me. And one is that, like Kate, I think I found my way to ModPo in 2013. And that was as a participant, and I had just moved upstate and was feeling lots of ways about being apart from a community that I was really quite involved in. And ModPo really became a space that I always make time for now because it represents something, and this is coming out of what I heard Dan saying, it represents something that's fairly radical as far as inclusivity. And, you know, the idea that there is this space out there where people who would probably not otherwise be in conversation organically come together and work towards understanding something. And that something happens to be poetry, which I think is a significant part of what I love so much about ModPo, is that poetry presents these tiny puzzles that build communities around them because you can read and learn from them infinitely. And I'll stop there, but thank you all. And thank you, Al. I feel honored to be a member of this community.
Erica, the feeling is mutual. We're honored that you're part of the community here as a TA for so long and the co-creator of the Teacher Resource Center, which you were involved in and Max helped with and others. Now we turn to Jason, and then we're going to switch gears.
I mean, I remember that moment 10 years ago. I think Al was wrapping things up and I saw Dan shaking over in the corner basically, and you know, went over to get him the mic. And part of what makes community so powerful together is, sure, we get at meaning together, but it is not really as though the meaning pre-exists or coming together. Regardless of what the poet, writer may have intended, it's every single person's like absolute singularity of self, that the more so the poem grows, the more readers attend to it and discuss it. we forget that language is made in the body, and that is one of the most intimate, embodied ways in which we call to one another. And to go deep and to really think closely, even just about a word. It's like each word is an ocean and no two people swim through it the same. And all of us together create meaning. Anyway, ModPo would have been a sci-fi idea 30 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So we're using a kind of medium language which we can see in many different forms. I guess what I want everyone to hear is that what you bring to the poem, no one else can bring. And so the more people who gather around, the more astonishing things can be. It's a form of just, linguistic intimacy across the globe.
Jason, thank you so much. Jason Suska, that was beautiful. Thank you.